Brackenhide Hollow has been added as one of the new dungeons for Mythic Plus in Season 2. The dungeon will start with a 35-minute timer, so as long as you complete the dungeon within that window, you will upgrade your key. As you start the Brackenhide Hollow dungeon, you'll need to free 5 Tuskar that are located in meat storage cages around the Lost Kanniak area. This will allow you to engage with the first boss. You can choose which cages you want to open depending on your route, as they are surrounded by a variety of angry gnolls. Claw fighters will be a problem for your tank with their Bloody Bite ability. This bite leaves a stacking bleeding effect on their target until they are healed above 90% health, a bit like the Grievous mechanic. Occasionally, these fighters will also fixate random players with Vicious Claw Mangle for 5 seconds. Kite the gnoll during this ability with any CC you have. Bone Crushers will also inflict your tank with a Bloody Bite, but this mob will also cast Crushing Smash, dealing moderate damage and slowing your movement speed by 30% for 12 seconds. You'll find Vicious Hyenas that will reduce your tank's healing intake for 12 seconds with their Infected Bite. This can be a problem for tanks in conjunction with the other tank busters here, so prepare accordingly. Bone Bolt Hunters should be one of your priority kill targets here, as they will randomly shoot people for high unavoidable damage, but also use Bone Bolt. This deals high initial damage to a random player and leaves a heavy bleed on the player for 12 seconds, and while players are affected by this dot, they take 50% increased upfront damage from further Bone Bolts. These gnolls also launch toxic traps that will deal upfront nature damage and leave a toxic pool if triggered, so avoid these at all costs. Decay Speakers are probably the scariest mob in this dungeon, so you should always prioritize these first. They deal high single target damage with Decay Surge, but most notably cast Withering Burst, applying a Withering debuff to all players within 4 yards of the impact. This debuff deals damage every 2 seconds and reduces your movement speed, and this effect can stack. Speakers will also empower their Mystic friends with the Rot Chanting totems they spawn. Trickclaw Mystics are stationary mobs that will spam cast Earthbolt, which you'll want to interrupt so you can actually cleave them down. These mobs are not dangerous themselves, but they do become scary when the totems are active, as they unlock their Witherbolt ability. This deals nature damage and also applies the Withering debuff. You're getting the point here. Focus down the totems ASAP so as few of these go off as possible. Finally, in this area we have another very important mob, the Bracken War Scourge. They buff their nearby allies, increasing all of their damage done by 15%, but also reducing their cooldowns by 25%, so you won't want to do big pulls with these guys present. You must interrupt their hideous cackle cast at all costs, otherwise your whole party will be feared, aka a guaranteed wipe. You'll also want to dodge their Rage Storm ability, but note that this can be soothed off. After killing off these mobs and freeing the 5 different Tuskars, you will then gain access to the first boss, Hackclaw's Warband. During the encounter, the bosses will have a Prey on the Weak aura that empowers the bosses with 10% haste for every 10% health missing on each player. Healers, you'll want to ideally keep your whole party above 90% health as much as you can to avoid this stacking up. Outside of this aura, each of these gnolls have unique health and abilities that you'll need to deal with, so let's go over them. Hackclaw will cast Bladestorm, which you'll need to dodge at all costs, which is easy because she's slowed. Just don't be greedy. Her auto attacks will cleave all players in front of her, so face the boss away and DPS stand behind. During the fight, Rira will charge random members of your party with her Savage Charge. During her lineup, tanks will want to position themselves between Hackclaw and the player being charged so that the tank eats the big hit of damage. This can definitely be fatal if a squishy DPS takes the charge to the face. Gashtooth will occasionally cast Gash Frenzy, teleporting him behind every player and applying a bleed for 45 seconds. This can be removed if players are healed above 90%, which you'll want to take care of anyway to avoid the bosses gaining their aura. He will also cast Marked for Butchery. The player targeted by this mechanic will want to use the defensive and get spot healed by the healer. Your team should aim to dispel his Decayed Senses debuff ASAP, otherwise this player will become blinded and take 150% increased physical damage for 15 seconds, making them very prone to one-shots. And finally, Trick Totem. Your main priority kick will be on the greater healing rapids to prevent the bosses from healing. Note that this is obviously harder to kick the more haste a boss has from the Prey on the Weak aura, so stay healthy. After kicking this, any spare interrupt should be used on Earthbolt casts. You'll want to be aware of Trick Totem's Blood Frenzy mechanic too. If any of the gnolls drop below 15% health, they will all automatically gain a 30% haste and damage buff, so you'll want to cleave them down as evenly as possible. This will prevent you increasing the difficulty of the fight in the later stages. Finally, Trick Totem will spawn a Hex Trick Totem that you will want to kill immediately to stop your teammates from being incapacitated for 15 seconds while it channels. After defeating the Warband, the gate in front of you will open. We'll continue forward, but you can also cut right to head towards the Treemouth boss, which probably will be the play as this trash seems a lot easier. I'll go over this trash later, but first we'll head to Gutshot. On the way there, you'll face lots of new mobs, so here's what you'll need to know. Flesh Ripper Vultures will cast Screech, which you'll want to kick. This is just an AoE on your party if it goes off, but it can hurt when coupled with other mechanics. Rotbow Stalkers will be the mob that causes the most problems here. They also buff their allies with the Pack Tactics buff and use Bone Bolt. They do however have a Bone Bolt volley frontal ability which you'll need to sidestep as it has a 40-yard range. Stalkers will also empower nearby beasts with scented meat, inflicting a dot on a random player, and while affected, nearby beasts will attack you. Your group will want to CC the beast to prevent the player from straight up dying. After this room is done, you'll find a Bracken War Scourge that we fought earlier, interrupt the Cackle and dodge the Blade Storm, but there's also 6 stealthed Gut Stabbers, so be aware. They'll again cast Bloody Bite on your tank, but they'll also cast Withering Poison. This applies a nature dot and reduces haste and movement speed by 40%. Healers will want to dispel this to prevent your DPS from raging. Next, we'll move on to Gutshot. From the beginning of this fight, Gutshot will have 2 Rotfang Hyenas with her. The boss has the same Pack Tactics aura under the name of Hunt Leader's Tactics, which buffs their allies' damage by 15% and reduces their cooldowns by 25%. While these hyenas are active, they are your biggest priority before the boss casts cool hyenas again. These hyenas during the fight will only attack the tank until Meat Toss is cast. Gutshot will throw meat at a random target. If affected by this, you'll want to kite away from the hyenas as they buff themselves with Feeding Frenzy for 10 seconds, increasing their damage done by 100% and applying a 10-second bleed effect that reduces your healing taken and movement speed by 50%, so make sure they are kited and CC'd. You can also do this by utilizing the ensnaring traps that Gutshot throws down. You'll want to dodge them yourself, but they affect the hyenas too if they are dragged through. Tanks will also want to be wary of where these traps are so that you don't get knocked into them accidentally after the boss's Tank Buster ability, creatively named Gutshot. Your party will want to watch out for the hyena's Bounding Leap, dealing damage and stunning all players within 3 yards of the impact. Finally, Gutshot will periodically cast Master's Call, freeing hyenas from the traps and buffing their movement speed for 5 seconds. When you see the boss casting this, make sure you get away from the hyenas. Now that Gutshot is defeated, this will now be your new spawn point. We'll now progress to the next boss, Treemouth, where there isn't many new mobs to face if you followed this route. We will, however, face one of the scarier mobs in the dungeon, Stink Breath. You'll want to get out of his Violent Whirlwind, and he has a frontal, again creatively named Stink Breath, that you definitely need to dodge because it will probably kill you, but if not, it will disorient you for 4 seconds. If you did choose to go right earlier after the first boss, you'll encounter some different mobs on the way to Treemouth. These mobs are relatively simple, so this will probably be the standard route. Slimes are present in every pack, and you'll want to be careful once you kill them as they burst, leaving behind a toxic pool. Shapers will summon Lashes, which you'll want to quickly focus down as they'll stack up a bleeding effect on the tank. You'll also want to interrupt the Touch of Decay cast. Decayed Elders will summon more Lashes that you'll need to focus, and finally you'll meet some Wilted Oaks that have an Essence of Decay aura which summons even more Lashes every 12 seconds. The Oaks will also cast Necrotic Breath, which is a frontal you'll need to dodge, as well as their stomp on the ground around them. Now that we've cleared this trash, we can engage with Treemouth. Treemouth will cast Grasping Vines whenever it reaches 100 energy. This will drag your whole party towards the boss, and directly after, Treemouth will consume anyone within 10 yards. Getting consumed will deal nature damage to this player for 10 seconds until the Absorb Shield is broken. You will actually want to let your most durable player get consumed here, because if Treemouth doesn't consume anyone, he will become permanently enraged for the rest of the fight, increasing his damage done by 150% and haste by 20. Also note that after a player is consumed, they will gain a partially digested debuff, increasing the damage they take by 200% from consume for 60 seconds, so you can never send the same player twice in a row. Apart from this consume mechanic, Treemouth will also cast a frontal ability, Decay Spray, that you'll need to dodge, and this will summon 4 decaying slimes. These slimes will cast Gushing Ooze that you'll want to kick, and once they die they'll cast Burst. Both of these abilities will deal damage to players within 5 yards. The burst, however, will also leave a toxic pool on the ground that you'll want to avoid. Finally, your tanks will want to be careful where they aim the Vine Whip cast, as it will follow you, so keep the boss facing away at all times. Once you defeat Treemouth, you'll head towards the Den of Decay, which is the final area of the Brackenhide Hollow. You'll want to interrupt the Filth Caller's Decay Surge cast and be wary of rotting surge patches on the ground. Diseased Lashes will put your tank at risk through their healing absorb from Decay Claws, as well as their Bloody Bite combo. Fetid Rot Singers are one of the harder mobs you'll engage here. They once again buff their allies with Pack Tactics, and you'll want to interrupt the burst of decay that they cast at a random target, dealing nature damage to anybody within 5 yards. Rot Singers will also summon totems that you should immediately swap to, so you can prevent your party from stacking up the withering debuffs. Rot Hexes are another mob you'll encounter here. You'll need to spread out as a group at least 5 yards from each other to prevent the withering contagion debuff from spreading. This is a 15-second dot that reduces your damage done by 20% and spreads if your party is close. You'll need to do your best to prevent them empowering themselves with Siphon Decay by standing 30 yards away if you are affected by Withering Contagion whenever the Rot Hexer casts this. Wither Biters are also found in every single pack, but you'll be able to quickly deal with these as they aren't elites. They do, however, inflict bloody bites on your tank, so be careful. The final boss in Brackenhide, Decatriarch Wratheye. During the encounter, you'll want to avoid the choking rot cloud floating around the room. It will silence you while you are stood in it and deal damage to you, as well as applying a debuff called Withering Rot. This debuff can stack up to 99 times, though I wouldn't recommend trying, and the stacks of this debuff will not expire until the boss casts her Decaying Strength ability. At 100 energy, she will cast Decaying Strength, decreasing your group's damage by 5% for 8 seconds, and buffing her own damage by 5%, and this effect can stack. Also, when she casts this, she will create a Withered Eruption at each player's location. This eruption deals damage to all nearby players, increasing in size based on how many applications of Withering Rot the player has, so make sure to stay spread for this. As soon as the boss spawns her Rot Burst totem, you'll need to swap a new kit. The longer this totem stays alive, the more pulsating damage your party will suffer, as it repeatedly casts Rotting Burst, dealing group damage and applying a stack of Withering Rot. These totems will be the cause of most of your wipes, so make sure you save some damage and healing for these totems. Tanks will want to use Mitigation for her Decay Strike. This ability hits hard and puts a healing absorb on you that you and your healer will want to heal up ASAP, and tanks should drag the boss over to the totems for maximum cleave damage. But that's all you need to know for this encounter, and that wraps up Brackenhide Hollow in Mythic Plus. If this guide did help you, then please drop a like down below and also subscribe to your boy, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later.